has their own ringtone.
Oh, well, I'm going to talk to Patty about that one.
His is Anchors Away, hers is Tequila.
What is that cowboy one?
What's
I wanna,
hers?
Oh, the battleship is sinking.
I
And
wanna,
Yellow Dog, too.
hey, I wanna
No,
hear
that's
Anchors
my
Away.
That's my sister's.
Oh,
You play Anchors Away, I'll get on the table and
Okay.
tap that.
Thank you. It's 5:30, so we'll go ahead and start. I'd like to acknowledge that this is our council study session for February 27th, 2017. And we will start with roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wells.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here?
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember Trump Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
He'll be here in 15 minutes. Under announcements, reports, and presentations, I've amended the agenda and added 3 items. At the bottom, if you would put F, slogan, more than you can imagine. Item G is I thought we'd have a discussion. Some people would like some changes on our board and deputy mayor and council member report, that they want more time before it freezes out, and some other types of features. Thought we could discuss what recommendations we might want to make to IT.
Would you restate that one? I didn't follow.
Okay, we have on our iPad the ability to do our committee reports. And there's some functions that we would like to see added. So we thought we would discuss things such as some people would like spell check, some people would like the delay mode set so that they don't lose the content. And there might be other things that. Save. Yeah, and save. And finally, we're gonna talk about city council boards and committees appointments. We'll start with item A, Arts and Culture Center update. Daryl, please join us and introduce your team.
Like that.
We do too.
Key operator. All right, well, thank you. And this team is a great word for this one because this has taken a team to get it to the phase we are now. I'm Daryl Faber, Parks, Arts, and Recreation Director. Billy, you want to introduce yourself?
Stan Foster, Public Affairs Research Consultants. We were the consultants that worked on the Auburn Avenue Theater feasibility, and then also had the good fortune to work with the City of Auburn on the post office.
And I'm Julie Kruger, Arts and Events Manager.
And hopefully Ray Johnston from Johnston Architects joins us in a minute. He is in Seattle behind a tanker that's been flipped over all day on I-5 and I-90. So hopefully he'll be here any minute. But he's towards the end of the PowerPoint, so that's good. What we wanted to do today is kind of just update the council on where we are. Obviously in 2016, we purchased the old public health building, the Auburn Library, and have done a lot of community outreach on it. And that's really been an exciting part because when we get into detailed design drawings, we want to make sure we do the design to fit the needs of what the Auburn community has been looking for. We sought public input through a lot of stakeholder meetings, through staff meetings, Arts Commission, and also with Stan and the team that they have put together, and they've done similar projects in the past. We're also then at the end of this presentation going to talk about the funding, long-range funding of it, and some of the grants and opportunities that we've already applied for and some that we're looking forward to in the future, as well as a little bit of conversation about the phasing plan that we're going to put in so that we can occupy the building sooner rather than later. So Julie's going to kick it off here. We had the opportunity, if you want to click that, we're in the process right now of applying for a relatively large grant for
$480,000 Art Place.
Art Place, so it's a national competition. They only fund 3 or 4% of their projects, but as we like to say in our office, never made a shot we didn't take. So we're going to go for it. When you start talking about $500,000, you might as well take the time to apply. This video that's about 3 minutes long was part of that application, but we hope to use it for numerous applications in the future over the next coming years as we start getting more serious about large grant opportunities. So take a few minutes, and this tells us about the process that got us to tonight.
I believe public art is necessary in cities to help people see and understand and experience different cultures.
The Art and Culture Center for downtown Auburn would be a great thing for small businesses to bring people to our area and to help promote small business and the culture of art to Auburn.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I love that video because it really shows a lot of what we are doing in Auburn, but specifically what we could do with these 8,000 square feet. And the location next to the Auburn Ave Theater and a vacant alley all lend itself to a public gathering place. And as you can see from the comments that the public gave us, everybody sees it a little differently. Some see performing art, some see literary art, some see painting and gallery space. But everybody talks about, you know, the soul of Auburn in the downtown. So we're really excited about this project. We brought about 14,000 people to downtown Auburn at the Ave Theater this past year, and this can really augment that because of location. I did inadvertently say at the beginning that it was the old library. Obviously, it was the old post office, so I apologize for that. And the guts, so the bones of it being an old post office and health center are really solid yet. King County kept the heat on, and those systems are in pretty good place, as Stan can talk to in a minute. So back to public outreach, lots of press releases, newspaper articles, the Auburn Magazine, the video, the website, e-blasts. We went out of our way to make sure the people interested in the arts had an opportunity to give input as to what they want this building to look like, because it's only going to be as successful as the people that use it. We had focus groups. It was part of the Auburn Art Walk as well. Online survey, so a lot of conversations were had with staff. The Arts Commission were involved as well. A couple of the articles that were written about the facility, they were in our Auburn Magazine. There was a story in the Auburn Reporter about it, kind of the background and the history of the building as well and what it looked like in the past. So these are just examples of all the different methods that we used to get to the point we are today. A lot of social media. Had a couple of meetings downtown where we had the big flip charts and people could write about what they saw there, and we tried to hew those down into certain categories and then do some preliminary design based on the categories that they got narrowed down to. And a lot of different ages, which was great. There were kids and teens interested in sound and music, and there were older people interested in, you know, the painting and art. And so we went through all of that process. Obviously, at that point, we had to bring in experts who have done this before. And Stan and his group at PARC and Johnston Architects kind of took the bones of it. And I'm going to turn it over to them to talk a little bit about what they think can be and how it would lay out.
Thanks, Daryl. The notion of good bones, that building has good bones. There's no question about it. And in 1937, they knew how to build those buildings pretty darn good. So, full disclosure, I love historic buildings, and the vision that the city council had in acquiring that building, you should be applauded for your efforts to make that part of the Auburn downtown scene, because it's going to add a degree of vitality to downtown that is just going to be unsurpassed. It's really going to be a fabulous location, fabulous building, and a fabulous preservation of the history of Auburn too. So I applaud you on that. I'm gonna jump a little bit around here, hoping that Ray Johnson shows up here, who is the architect that did most of the design work, and those slides are coming up. But we've had the good fortune and of working on these kinds of conversions of historic buildings in the past. And the scale of this building, the cost to repurpose it for use in Auburn is all within those comfort zones. If there is a comfort zone in raising money for these kinds of projects, this is definitely within the comfort zone for that, particularly for a sized city of Auburn. And also the amount of work that Daryl and Julie and his team have done in terms of public outreach is testimony to the citizens' affection for that city. We found that when we worked on the Auburn Avenue Theater. They were definitely in love with the output from the theater. But this building is a different kind of, the old post office is a little different animal because it's got such beautiful lines and it's such part of the history of Auburn that it really conveys much more than just an arts and culture center. It's really a piece of Auburn that is going to shine for years to come. And like I said, we asked Ray Johnson Architects to come in and be part of our team on the design of this.
And
tiny.
there he is.
And he's come down from up north, so.
Seattle, up
He-
north.
Sorry I'm late. A little bit.
Hey, Ray.
He can give you a full road report here. Is that,
Really nasty.
part of the reason for picking Johnson Architects was that they have a great history on working on these kinds of conversions of old historic buildings to public purposes. Ray and I have had a chance to work together in the past. And the other thing in talking to Ray, before we retained Johnson Architects to work on this, he's already done one of these buildings before, and I'll let him discuss that with you. But so same year, same style, same blueprint, basically. So he understands what it takes to do the conversion. So that he hit the ground running here in Auburn Avenue on that. With the whole idea of the Arts and Culture Center, that gives this a huge funding opportunity because it meets so many needs in the community. And like I said, the phase 1 and phase 2 activities are well within a reasonable budget for this kind of project. And there are a number of funding sources available. So I'm going to turn this over to Ray, and we're going to talk about the phase 1 goal estimate and the phase 2 goal estimate. So with no much ado, Ray Johnson.
Thank you.
Well, I have worked on these kinds of buildings before in their various reuses. These are really a great set of buildings. They were built incredibly well back in the day, and so today you see them as city halls, as libraries, all kinds of other facilities. The superstructure, the concrete and brick and all that, all those fundamental aspects of the building are in pretty good shape. Usually what needs replacing are the things that would normally wear out over a period of time. Windows need repairing or replacing, mechanical systems need upgrading, and frequently electrical as well, plumbing. And then the idea of changing it to a different use also calls for various modifications. When we started looking at it, it was great to see the wish list, the community interaction, and the various things that people were interested in. I've been involved professionally, but also personally in similar facilities in Eastern Washington. I chair and have for almost 9 years now, I guess, arts and culture community in the town of Twisp. So as we were looking at it, there was first, where will all these different kinds of uses fit in? What might draw people? How would its presence work along the street and along the alley? And then how might you carve up the costs of all those different interventions in the building to come up with some reasonable phasing? And, in very simple terms, that divided pretty well into the main floor off the street and off the alley and the floor below. The initial phase is a little bit more heavy lifting than the second phase, in that some of the basic infrastructure that needs to be upgraded should be taken care of at the beginning. Mechanical systems in particular are a fairly big number. And then in the process of activating the building and making sure people are there and people use it, we went through and discussed ideas like a little coffee shop or some sort of retail outlet. Of course, the main event, the thing you would see as you drive by through the windows, is really the art gallery. But what's beyond the art gallery? Some of the organizations I'm involved with have featured artists or artists in residence who, part of the exchange for exposure in the studio space is that they be there a certain amount of the time and active in a part of the building that's visible to the public. So all of that to us seemed like a first phase, a place that you could go and get a cup of coffee, see what was showing recently, maybe even buy some of the products. That the one I'm involved with has a really good gift shops of cards, artworks of all kinds. Maybe take a class. That first floor has enough space for a studio for class purposes, and maybe that's that featured artist for the month that's teaching printmaking or ceramics or painting or music or almost anything. And then there's a lot of space downstairs, and it can be modified in a fairly clean way to create things that might support other arts activities in the vicinity. It might support dance practice, for example, for performances in the theater next door, or the alley really serves mostly those two things, the old post office and the theater. So why not maybe in conjunction with that second phase, punch out, create a back door that allows a connection to the alley and allows the alley to become part of this growing Auburn Arts District that I think the potential exists for. So these estimates, we looked at how you might lay those things out, and we have some floor plans I can walk through how they might lay out for you, and then looked at very fairly broad brush costs. Gee, what's this? We consulted with some of the engineers we worked with. We worked a little bit from experience. We looked at areas of things, for example, like flooring. The whole front of the building has this beautiful terrazzo. You can barely find anybody who knows how to do that today, let alone pay for it. And so that just needs to be, revealed and polished up a little bit. But at the back, there are some wood floors and things that need a new finish. So we thought about that in terms of how much per square foot the flooring might cost. And we looked at the ductwork and the ceilings, the clear story, which needs a little refurbishing. And basically applied general per square foot numbers to those, added the kinds of multipliers that you need to, taxes, for example, sales tax applies to construction, as you know, and came up with these numbers and the total goal of $3 million, roughly split in half, a little bit more in the first phase.
So before we get, I know you want to get right to design, being an architect. We're going to pass out a little piece about funding strategies before we get to design.
Yeah.
And we didn't put this in your packet because you guys would have gone straight to the numbers.
Yes, is it all right if we interrupt, Darrell, I know you only have 10 minutes left, but is it all right if we interrupt for questions?
Preferred, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please, Councilmember Pelosi.
So, this building, I'm sure, does not have air conditioning.
It did. I mean, it doesn't have, I doubt it works very well right now.
Oh, okay. But the
But
plan
it
is
has
to
5
upgrade
heat
that?
pumps right now, and they're all too old and need replacing. And then the
Okay.
duct's probably kind of old school, 20 years ago, so.
Thank you.
Then, Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
You mentioned that utilizing the theater with this through the alley. Are we looking to close down the alley and put a fence in there so they could go between and
Yeah, we'll show some design of that in a few minutes, but we have, through the Livable Cities program that University of Washington is doing, they're kind of looking at activating that alleyway like you've seen maybe in Portland or other cities, with lighting or planters, and how perhaps it could be closed, and how it could be a space with maybe tables with umbrellas or outside music or concert, trying to get it activated. It doesn't really get much use now by cars, and so maybe that does have a higher calling, so we're looking at that.
Who owns the alley? Does it go with the theater, or does
So
it
it
go?
goes with the city, goes with the theater and the health building up until the end of those buildings, and then
Okay,
it
so it
becomes,
splits, the ownership is split.
which is the city on both sides.
Oh,
So the city owns the alley.
okay, great, good, makes it a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be really nice.
Because one of the questions that I really have is, similar to what Councilmember Trout Manuel said, is I want to see how we are going to blend those two structures to kind of make it truly a center
Yeah.
and not just a building, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
same with the lawn under the tree. The whole area outside, art can flow everywhere, and one of the issues we have at the Auburn Ave is when we get a 3-week run of performance, we can't have other renters, we're in there all the time, so be able to do performance practice in this
Yeah.
building could potentially free up the other building for more acts as well.
Yeah, okay.
So briefly on the funding strategies, we've kind of put it into larger foundation grants, which is $50,000 or more, and smaller, 50,000 or less, and divided those into numerous groups and other potential funding opportunities, which is what the handout is, and it kind of gets into what those are. Obviously, for culture, which is Kane County, we use them quite a bit. Arts Washington, Department of Commerce grants, that's what we got through the Senator Bain's office for the new community center. We got a $3 million appropriation. So there's a lot of opportunities for some large asks. Unfortunately, we're not timed very well with the state budget this time, but we're timed pretty well. We know the players pretty well, and I think this project really speaks to what the public wants. And Auburn, I think, would be a great ask for the county and the state and federal government.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Are you reaching out to Muckleshoot?
And yes, in fact, that came up really early in the community conversation that we had. To reach out to Muckleshoot regarding funding, but also regarding artists. I think there's a cultural connection there that the city, the time is right, and the location is right. They've done great things up on their tribal land, but we really haven't integrated their culture into the Auburn community as well as we can.
Tribal, the chairperson, Virginia Cross, was at the gallery this last weekend, and she's very much interested in getting some of the Native American art down here, really excited, yeah.
Yeah, and we have Trudy Moses is on the Arts Commission now, and so that's a great nexus for this as well.
Her name was mentioned.
Yeah, so I think that's really important. We talked about, all those great activities that we could move in here. So this is basically just a list of who we're asking and going after. You'll see a lot of it, I think, at the $1.5 million. Our goal is to get that done in, the next year or so, not through bake sales, but through large asks. Sometimes at $50 a brick, you spend a lot of time doing paperwork for bricks. We'd rather get more $50,000 asks out there and higher than that, as well as potential naming rights on some pieces as well. And so that's kind of your take-home piece here. And if you have ideas for who we should go ask, we are not immune to asking anybody. So here's your phase, your timeline. We purchased it last year. We've been doing a lot of reconnaissance in the last 6 months. We'd love to do renovations at the end of 17 and 18. And we may also work on funding maybe 50% of the upstairs, the terrazzo floor and the windows, etc., earlier than in some restroom work. Ray can kind of talk to the timing of the improvements. So we'd like to get activity in there. It's better than being empty. So, and I think right now we have about $500,000-ish, 300,000. 210 plus a couple of grand asks confirmed. So.
There's a big one right here in front of you if you want to maybe move to the
I was
middle.
gonna grab a laser
Oh.
point.
No, actually, yeah, I could just
Oh, you want to do
talk
that?
to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, design plans.
Okay. Well, they're not, it's just the beginning, so these need to be kind of refined, I think. So the entry over here. This whole area really was the historic, the place you went into the bank. We don't go do that very much anymore. And it was really nicely done. And the tellers were generally back in here underneath that clear story. So pulling up some of the carpet in there and improving the finishes is pretty important. The organization before, we had bathrooms down in here and some back here, and a lot of pretty old plumbing. So, and the flexibility in the floor below in the basement to reroute plumbing. So, in the process, we thought, okay, we're going to need a little bit more in the way of bathrooms. We can run a trunk line over here. We have waste lines in this vicinity. But that, if we run plumbing along underneath here, we can bring it out to a coffee shop in the corner. And that idea would really be a presence you could see through the windows. So, the retail spirit would work in that corner of the building. It could also double on, say, opening nights. One of the organizations I'm involved with has a monthly art opening, and they serve wine and snacks and things. So having this facility in the corner would allow for that. The other revenue source I mentioned would be a retail presence, and that's kind of doubled with the reception area. When you walk in, though, what do you see? We have gallery space, but perhaps beyond that is a space for that featured artist in the middle of the building. And in fact, maybe you could even see through that. That's maybe the next layer of design. You'd also see off in this direction. And one of the kind of favorite spots in the building that people, it may be a little counterintuitive, but a few of the people talking about this in our teamwork were fascinated by the old vault. I went to an art show at the Bellevue Art Museum once, and they had a space, they have a buried space like that that's very dark, and they had a light artist doing a performance in there. It was spectacular. So I think having a special room like that where something unusual might happen is great.
Are you referring to a bank vault?
Yeah, it's a bank.
Right, that one?
How
Right-
big is that?
Right
Right
there.
there.
It's not very big, but it's dark.
It's like 10 by 12
It's a
or
heavy door.
something like that. And the doors are beautiful. Wouldn't want them to ever be closed and stuff. And then offices down in this corner. So you have the reception and people who might be part of the administration of the building. You need to be able to run this building with just one or two people because you don't want your operating costs to eat up funding. So that can be done from right in here. And then these offices, we had a variety of ideas about how those might be used. And so I'll leave it at that. I think programming for those specifically could change over time. And then this was an addition to the original building back here. So it is a pretty nice room. It's got a good bank of windows with easterly light. And it would be a nice little classroom for artist in residence classes or anything else you may want to program. And then, let's see, why don't we talk, well, we can talk about this a little bit. In phase 2, we need to improve the exiting from the basement. Right now, it's not entirely legal. We'll show the basement slide in a minute. But the upstairs, pretty good exiting. The main door and this back door, and it's got ramps, so it's ADA accessible, all those things. But the basement isn't. And that's that alley, and it's adjacent to theater, and the back door of the theater and some other things back there. The theater could be modified to have its alley presence maybe be a little more special or dramatic. But the main thing is, there's a lot of space out around here, and this parking lot back here. If we do it right, we could make this entry vestibule, put a new stair in, but then have enough space back there to perform. There could be a garage door that opens up onto the alley, so you could have anything from musicians to little dramatic performances that could occur here and interact with an event that might happen on the alley and tie the theater and the art center together. Any questions about this?
I like the idea of having at least one classroom on the main floor.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not all of them in the basement. I think that that gives us the wide range of use opportunities. And I've walked back there, and I like that idea of that alcove being built into something that we can open up, maybe have huge garage doors or something where we can open it up and share that space with the theater in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be cool. I think, this could, the artist in residence we have at Twistworks right now is actually alternating. She teaches classes in her studio as well. So I think the central space, and even the front gallery could be used. It could be pretty flexible. So.
I think that the important thing for council to keep in mind is that this can be anything essentially Auburn wants. I mean, you've got enough flexibility there, and the building has got enough opportunities to re-envision how it's going to perform, that there's really, it's a really a blank slate in a lot of ways in terms of an art hub, art and culture hub. So it's expansive, it's not constrictive. Yes, sir.
Sorry I'm late, but did you talk at all about a green room for the theater?
We didn't talk specifically about a green room, but I could say that we've all heard about a green room. We've certainly considered the green room, and I think with that connection that Ray was just talking about, that would lend itself to having the old post office utilized as that green room space that doesn't exist.
Then you'd have to build a walkway, wouldn't you, so that people wouldn't get their costumes soaked in the rain walking across there?
Well, I think that, again, that alleyway is a work in progress too. I mean, part of that, once you guys, if you guys acquire the building that the theater's in, then I think that all bets are off in terms of how we can reconfigure that and connect that to the old post office building, so.
Rich, we asked the question a little earlier about who owned that alley, and the city does own the alley, so. And I've got it on my to-do list here that maybe when we do the special focus group that Bill chairs on municipal services under facilities, would be a good time to have Daryl come and do a presentation on the Auburn, what's the status of the Auburn Theater and that lease and all of that.
We're going to quick walk through the basement since we're getting a little short on time.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's that new entry. Here's the existing stair downstairs from the floor above and the ramp from outside. This area is just described as staging and costume changes, so that would be a green room-like function. Over here, some of the things we heard and we've done elsewhere, and so on the notes that the community provided, were the idea of a little recording space. It takes something special in the way of acoustics, but not a whole lot more. And a flexible studio over here. It could be printmaking or anything else you want. Or this central space, we wouldn't really need to modify much. It'd be a good rehearsal room. Back in here, there's this chimney, and we need to do a little more exploratory work to verify. But we thought that ceramics and maybe glass, things that could use that chimney, might be kind of a cool use back in this corner. And then, of course, the bathrooms, and there are existing mechanical spaces that need to remain. So that programming, as Stan said, could really be changed up quite a bit. You just get plumbing down there for the bathrooms, take care of the exiting, and then you're in good shape.
Councilmember Pelosi.
In your review as an architect, is there a security system there now?
If there is one, it doesn't
So
have much of an appearance.
So your plan is to have a security system incorporated?
I would, and it's one of the things that's getting cheaper and cheaper all the time.
Yeah.
So many things cost more.
You know, like cameras and...
Yep.
Councilmember Wagner.
On that security system item, I think we're going to have a lot of people wanting to use those restrooms. So we want cameras in the restroom or something to keep management of that.
Yeah,
I don't know about cameras, but something that, you know. My concern, being that I am a crafts person, not an artist, is accessibility to water. And a lot of these rooms don't have water available in this actual room. They have it just in the bathroom. It would be nice if one of these rooms or a couple of them had a sink or something.
Yeah, I think a lot of, I don't mean to interrupt your
No,
train of thought,
no.
but I think a lot of those rooms do have sinks in them because they were used by public health nurses as, for vaccinations and things like that. So there is flexibility there too.
Yeah, I think we can
All
do that.
art is messy, especially the way I do it.
Good artist, Messi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a really quick on that vault. I had gone somewhere where it was a black room and they switched a light and everybody that was in there was leaning against the walls. And then they turn off the, and then you leave your print on there and the kids loved it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
interactive, yeah.
Yeah, every time we go in there, that's the room that we're all like, that room has to stay, because originally it was like, well, let's use this for storage for the espresso bar. We're like, no, it's gotta be used for something better than storage.
Okay.
So there's a quick schematic here of the interior main floor, and at the bottom right, we just stole that from somewhere else, but that's the alleyway. Not our alleyway, but it is an alleyway.
Well, that's North Alley in Pioneer Square, and it's about the same size as yours, and the catenary lights and uses next to it. It's frequently active like that. The only, not much more to say about this, except that in this sketch, this is that retail area with the reception behind. This is the coffee bar idea. And then we've our office has used mobile panels. One thing we started looking at was how many places do we have left to hang art, and we want to make sure there's plenty. And a lot of galleries and studios use a mobile panel that can be wheeled around. So we're familiar with several kinds, and that's what's shown here. And then the feature artists looking beyond in that central space.
The operable windows and all those things are just ideal. The amount of light that this building gets. I think if you're given a third purpose, it would be an art center. Yeah. So let me, I think there's one slide left. Yeah, programming, you guys can read through that on your own, but it was really clear that we asked about everybody in the town that had any interest in art, what they wanted to see there, and then try to fine tune it into 8,000 feet and then probably 4,000 for the first couple of years. So we went out and talked to everybody. And so those were a lot of the comments that we heard, similar to what tonight, you know, food, beverage, gift shop kind of as your couple revenue streams, but classes and rentals, and the Auburn, what's the arts organization,
Auburn Valley Creative Arts.
Yeah, Auburn Valley Creative Arts, a nexus with them as well as the Muckleshoots and everybody else. There's just a few of the activities that have already happened there. Obviously, one of the first moves will be to get rid of that overhang, because it's really ugly. And the canopy, and the cupola is very much salvageable. I think we're gonna do a special little grant for that to get it looking like it did when it opened. And some landscape improvements. We already have Mike Miller and his team working on those, and irrigation just in the short term. So, I think that's the end of it, but questions for Stan and Ray?
I just want to give you a couple examples. The Elgin Opera House, which is a 1912 brick building in a little town of 400 people, raised $1.7 million in 2012 of grants, the same kind of grants that you guys are going for, to repurpose that old opera house. Sherwood, City of Sherwood in Oregon as well, put in a cultural center. They spent $5.5 million to do a cultural center in a city smaller than Auburn as well. So the scale of what you've got to do and what you're starting out with is so much more than maybe, I like the 1912 Opera House, so I can't say more than that. But
this is solid.
Yeah, but this is a real great launching off point, and it really can become the manifestation of Auburn's dreams as an art and culture center. It really, I mean, I don't want to say sky's the limit, but as much as you can imagine, you can do there. I really believe that, so.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for you, Bill. I think we would like some more information on the Avenue Theater. Do you want to add that to your committee on municipal services? Or do you just want me to add it as another event, a discussion item for March 27th. Would you let me know what your preference is?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Okay, let me know.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move into our second item, which is the Human Services Overview.
Okay.
Which one do you want?
Over here. Are you going over there? All right. I have some goodies for you guys.
Oh, my goodness.
They're a little bit easier to read than the ones that are.
Oh, so we won't need others in the packet?
Yeah, this is a
Bigger print?
bigger print and in color.
Oh, good.
What we provided in the packet didn't have the numbers that we were working on, but we did want to at least provide you with the initial list, so you knew what we would be showing over and what we were researching.
That's good.
Not sure.
There's
Oh,
numbers.
that's good. Just what I wanted.
Good. I'm seeing positive smiles from Councilmember Wagner. Very good. Good evening, Council. Dana Hinman, Director of Administration, and I'm here with Erica Escueda. She is our Human Services Manager. And based on our last discussion, it was requested that we give as broad an overview as we possibly can on all things that would constitute a human services activity that we provide. The first few pages of the packet is rerun material. We have gone over this numerous times. The very first page is simply the CDBG funding as it exists right now in our current plan and what those numbers are. The next few pages with the color coding is the human services funding that is general, comes out of our general fund, the 1%, and it is color coded by area of focus, the four focus priorities that have been set forth that the Human Services Committee works through for their funding, and the list of funded agencies that the committee has put forward, and that's about another 4 pages. The last 2 pages are, there are 3 pages, but the third page is just lines, which you're more than welcome to write on if you wish. This is that other category that Councilmember Wagner had requested, and we had started compiling a list of all activities that we could possibly think of citywide that would fall into what might be considered providing a human service or providing something for those in need in our community. Those activities range from the community services work crew that's overseen by our human resources department to a call that our police officers might respond to, maybe related to domestic violence or a mental health issue or a drug issue, from the YMCA vouchers that are provided to us. We receive 60 vouchers a year, and so I give you these by way of example to show that, you know, providing human services as a local jurisdiction is not just a centralized function, which is what I think you were trying to get at, Councilmember Wagner, is that there are numerous services provided throughout the city. There are numerous daily standard operating procedures that go on day in and day out in this city for maybe our code enforcement group that goes out with our police department and maybe our real estate staff to work on a homeless encampment. That is a direct service that we could apply direct costs to. We know essentially how much we spent in 2016, let's say on homeless encampment cleanup. So that is a direct cost, where a YMCA voucher, there's not really a cost to that, but there's a value to that. So we're provided 60 vouchers a year. A family pass at the YMCA is about $100. So if we estimate that out, that could be a $72,000 value that is awarded to us, if you will, or a cost that the YMCA chooses to invest in our community, and we simply administer the program by going through the applications and deciding on who qualifies. So there is some staff time involved in doing an activity like that. We've tried our very best. Our department directors and staff have tried to put a dollar figure on the staff time, the per hour cost. That's really, it's kind of an average of how the department director and the staff might average out the cost, the hourly cost of their staff to work through these programs on an annual basis. So what we asked of our staff was to think about 2016, look at these activities, give us activities that they think might apply to a human service response, if you will, to our community. And you know, in the end, say on the second page, and I really need to caution that this is an estimation at best, a very rough estimation of cost and valuation. Shelley Coleman especially is you know, really wants to, this is not a hard and fast number, but we could say that it is perhaps an estimated dollar investment from city staff and other programs outside those direct centralized functions of CDBG and 1%, that we could say the city of Auburn invests in other or indirect human services to the city of Auburn, which you can see at the end is about $1.7 million. But again, I can't say it enough into this microphone in a public meeting that it is an absolute estimation of investment or valuation or money spent. So with that brief overview.
Okay, Councilmember Pelosi.
So looking at line 34,
Okay.
that's the 1.7 million.
Okay, at the end of the, yeah.
Yeah. So how is that divided up into general fund money and CDBG money?
None of this would be CDBG money.
Oh, none.
And
Oh, yeah.
we could say some of that would be general fund money. Say for an example, the money that we would spend cleaning up, our staff cleaning up a homeless encampment. That would be general fund dollars in cleaning up that encampment. And then going back to the YMCA voucher program, that's $72,000, but that's not real money. That's just a valuation of the annual passes that they give to us to administer that program. So
I like your presentation here. I think that this is an excellent map to share with the Human Services Commission or committee for them to see what the city is already investing, so that when they look at some of these other grants, to give an example, I know this year we worked very hard to get another public defender for domestic violence. And I don't know how much we pay attorneys, so I'll guess with fringe benefits, $125,000.
I think that cost is reflected in here.
Yeah, I think it is. You've got all the other defenders. So when I see that a new expenditure for this coming year of $125,000, you know, we have a picture of that. So then when we look at other attorney requests to support that particular topic, we know that we're already doing something pretty significant. So I like the idea that you show what we're already doing so that we're not duplicating things, or if we do duplicate, it's because there's a specific need. So this is great.
Good,
Thank you very much. Councilmember Wagner.
This is exactly what I wanted. I love it. So it's doing just what Largo said, and it'll do even more. It'll help us all focus on the customers that we're serving in this. So I like it a lot. I do have a couple of kind of nitpicking things.
Okay.
On the last page where we totaled up to 1.7 million, I'd like to see a total for out-of-pocket and a total for value.
Okay.
You've got both of them in the 1.7. And I think it's worthwhile to see what is actually coming out of the bank account. And then why didn't, on that same page, why didn't you extrapolate the $317.11 per call for the police?
There are three things that we do have some incomplete data on, and that is one of them. We
Okay.
were able to at least capture their estimation that a call for DV, mental health, or drug, you might estimate about $300 per call. How many types of calls did they have in 2016, and were we able to extrapolate that out? We haven't done it yet, but it's there.
A couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, Claude and Rich and I met with you and the mayor to specifically talk about maybe setting aside some money for the food bank. Letting them know possibly that we could do that so that they could do some long-range planning to look at acquiring something or building a capital campaign or something. And we were led to believe that there, and probably true, that there wasn't any unspoken funds at that time. My question is that I see that this speaks to $518,000, that the 1%, but really the 1% is $700,000, and there's $200,000 here that are missing that were unilaterally or through some constructive process set aside for the salad bar and I believe the YMCA. And so I kind of want to know, when did that practice start? Because ages ago, I was on the committee, and the total 1% went to the committee, and they decided based on the 4 parameters. So can you think back? I know this is new to both of you, as to when did the practice change, and how were the decisions made regarding the other $200,000?
So it's a two-part question.
Yeah.
Like, where does the 518 number come from? That is a 1%, but that's a number that's given to us from finance. So that's not anything that we decide specifically about what the 1% is. So unfortunately, Shelley is not here today,
Yeah.
but she would likely be able to give us a better answer to that question. To the other question, the past practice, I would say it's past practice, and it's the worst thing that we can say in our jobs that we don't like to say is that it's always been done that way. And so I guess the best thing to say, the follow-up to that would be, as we have had discussions, is that, you know, those things can and should be examined and modernized and updated, you know, to our current, to what our current priorities are. You know, between Erica and I, we probably have about 3 years of experience between us in overseeing the entire ball of wax, if you will. And, you know, we welcome and encourage and hope to have further discussions about making sure that we're addressing the true need in our city.
We appreciate this transparency. I mean, this is really, really incredible. But 1% is $700,000. 1% is not 500,000. So we need to get Shelley to, because she's the money girl, to confirm for us, because some of the documents that we've seen earlier in the last couple of months have had 700, and now it's down to 500, which is fine, because I don't have a problem with us setting aside money for special projects. I just like to get some of my special projects, if they're democratically approved, you know, in the pot. You had a question, Councilmember Wagner.
Another comment, Nana, that I almost think we ought to give these back to you and have you stamp on here something like the disclaimer you gave us to start with, so that people don't pick this up and see the decimal points and think this is really accurate. I think it's plenty accurate enough for the use that I want to make of it, plenty accurate enough. But there are other people who will pick it up and second decimal point. So, what does the rest of the council think? Do you think we should give these back to her and have her stamp something like that?
I already wrote all over mine.
Well,
No, she can do it. Councilmember
We'll return that back to-
Pelosi.
Well-
At 6:26, we said.
Dana already has told us that this is a ROM,
Yeah.
rough order magnitude.
We're not the only
and
people that are gonna look at
estimate.
this. All of the human service people are gonna look at it,
done
everybody's
for
gonna
2
look at it.
years.
Lots of
This is
people.
2 years.
This is a motion in work.
So why don't you
So-
restate, Rich, what you were suggesting?
I think that we should have a stamp on here that says these, you said it very well, I can't remember exactly how, about how these are estimates.
They are rough estimates of value, they're
Estimates,
not.
and
Yeah.
he calls it a ROM, you call it a rough estimate. And, you know, to have that right in front of everybody, every page they turn, so they don't look at the second decimal point.
I think you should do that and also take these last 2 pages and really label them that they're not part of this grant process. This is currently what the city is giving out of its general and other special budgets so that it isn't misinformation.
So Dan, is it, as far as what we publish or update, is there a way to asterisk the material so that what is officially out on our website and all those things are sufficiently,
I think we have a lot of flexibility in terms of how we prepare the documents that are part of our,
Okay,
we have some flexibility.
okay, good.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
So on line 10 regarding McKinney-Vento,
Uh-huh.
the $30,000 there. So we only have 5 hours of staff time involved in that. In that partnership, is this 30,000 the full amount that's used for the services for homeless students, or is there another contribution that comes through the Auburn School District to McKinney-Vento? How does that work in the process of McKinney-Vento?
The district funding, I am not sure of. In the conversations that we have had, they had discovered that they were eligible for other grants, and I know that they were going to go after those grants. So this is just our cost as we know it, but I do know in conversations of probably about a year ago with school district staff, they were looking at being able to augment that funding, which was an ask that we had made of them. The YMCA probably for almost 3 years, pretty much took this on pro bono. And finally they came to us and said, because we closed down, isn't that right, Daryl? We closed down Daryl worked with us as well on, we had an after-school program through Parks that was, we weren't really able to manage it as effectively as YMCA, so they took on those kids, and it grew to about almost 30 to 40 kids.
I think it's closer to 100.
Yeah, all
Yeah,
told,
see, it's
it was
right
getting-
over there by the bus garage. So when the bus garage picks all of these kids up, as early as 2 hours before school starts, they take them all to the Y. And the Y has been doing all of this. So the McKinney-Vento portion pays for the transportation. Yeah, and so it's nice that, yeah.
And that's part of my question of looking at,
Yeah.
the amount of money we have here. And that was my next question, is the number of homeless students that we're serving in the process, so. yeah.
And that would be do you know offhand, Daryl, what that number is?
No, not offhand. I'd like to add, though, that we're also serving now the middle school ones at the new rec.
Yeah.
And so in exchange for the transportation with the district, these kids are being admitted for free at that age group, because a lot of them are two-sibling families where there's a kid in elementary and a child in middle school. So I'm not sure what their number is. We're probably getting 10 to 15 a day in our age group, and I'd say they're probably close to 75 to 100 in their age group.
Yeah.
If we can nail those numbers down a little bit, I think it'd be helpful for us to understand, how many we're serving and kind of the.
Well, that's one of the points you've
demographics of
made
it.
earlier, is why don't you share your per unit cost idea? Remember how we took the pregnancy aid one that gets $5,550 and they serve 500 clients and it, yeah.
Yeah, what is,
Your
when you
unit.
look at the value of it, if we're giving somebody $10,000 and they're serving, 5 Auburn residents, well, we know, there's some money in there for that. if they're given $10,000 and they're serving 500 Auburn residents, what are we getting for our value? What is that dollar buying us? So if there's some way to kind of give us some way of kind of dissecting that and looking at value aspects of that. I know it's not the easiest thing to do, and
I know.
in some respects almost impossible to do. But for me, it's good to look at, what is the actual value we're receiving for the
Sure.
money we're giving out.
Okay.
Because I think when we looked at the pregnancy aid one, their total budget was $5,500, and really all we're paying is their rent. And we questioned, you can't give out car seats anymore because of the liability issues. And so we were really kind of wondering what we were getting for that money. Yeah. Okay.
Well, then it's all,
Councilmember Pelosi.
it's all about measurement. We've talked, and even when Mayor Lewis was on board, we brought all this stuff up, and we were all very, very interested in how do you measure some of the outcomes. Like you said, value. And,
I can actually try to answer that, because a lot of our applicants that get that 1%, part of their application and their reporting does have outcomes that's tailored to the service that they actually deliver. And to get the grant money, they do have to provide some kind of math equation to show what they're paying for based on the budget for the program. So we can provide something like that. It'd be another very extensive Excel sheet, but I mean, it can be done.
Well, it's my understanding that this is for 2 years, for this year and for next year. So I think that really what we're doing now is coming up with a list of questions and ideas so that when we get ready to plan for the 2019 one. What I would be interested in is I like how you've color-coded this in relationship to the 4 major themes that were selected a while ago as what we should emphasize for our human services, realizing that the city money has a broader scope and that you cover many significant areas with the CBGB grant. I think that it's time that the council reviews the parameters or the issues that should be addressed, especially in light of what we're hearing in the community and what some of the neighboring major cities have done in creating homelessness as an emergency. And that it might be nice, since we've got 2 years, to get an ad hoc committee to look and make a recommendation to us from a policy point of view of, are these the best focuses? Do we need to add a 5th one or something along that line?
So,
Councilmember Pelosi.
so line 48, 518,000. Is that a CDBG?
No, that's the,
That's the one.
that's what we contribute.
That's GF.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our money.
So CDBG then,
Is the front page.
is that just the first page here?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 514 is CDBG.
Yeah.
And they're pretty close numbers, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah,
and
Councilmember Pelosi.
again, these colors are just
Wonderful.
specific for like child abuse, it's identifying that, sexual assault, the different categories.
Yeah, there's the 4 priority areas.
Okay. I just wanted that clarified.
So when you get, yes,
When
Councilmember,
you come back to us, you're going to have this with the other chart that Mr. DeCoursey recommended? And will that be up to, you said like tonight, this isn't the actual numbers?
No, I think, and kind of to Councilmember Wagner's point, that we need to separate out things that are a valuation of services. For example, I keep going back to the YMCA vouchers, but that's $72,000, but that's coming out of YMCA's pocket, but that's a value. So that needs to be separated out from, say, the hard costs that we spent cleaning up from a homeless encampment. That's actual general fund money that we spent to clean that up. So separate those things out a little more clear. And then to kind of the demographic and the outcomes, and that was a conversation actually Kevin Snyder and I had as we were working through this, is kind of look at the return on investment, really, and what are we getting for our dollar? It's a good thing to look at, because kind of maybe to the pregnancy aid question, and again, and Erica is very diligent about reminding me that we are funding programs, we're not funding entire organizations. So that $5,000 goes to just supporting, the Auburn program that Pregnancy Aid provides. And so, is that a return on investment in their overall scope of things? And how does that look when it comes down to the
So with the sexual assault, the second page from 11 to 18, are those all local programs or are those outside of Auburn's program?
Are you on the color-coded thing?
Yeah, on the color-coded.
Every program we fund has to serve Auburn residents. So, so again, I kind of to that kind of theme of, where their agency may be located, is one thing. Where the people live that are served by the agency is the other thing, and that's what we fund.
So do they have a code saying they serve this many Auburns, they serve this many Kings?
They have to report to us quarterly,
Okay, so
and
can we get a copy of that? So,
we can,
like Mr. DeCoursey mentioned, how much is our dollar, how much are we paying for our buck?
Yeah, we can,
servicing for
yeah,
our buck. Okay, thank you.
So none of these programs, they're all Auburn people served in Auburn?
Mm-hmm. Well, not necessarily
No.
served in Auburn, but they're all our Auburn residents.
They
Yes.
go outside.
programs that serve Auburn residents.
Councilmember Pelosi and then Councilmember Wagner.
I'm looking at the last two pages, starting with number 1, department, and so forth, A, B, C, D, all the way out to I. So it would be interesting for me, and maybe this has already been talked about today, having a column that shows number of clients.
For the last two pages,
Like as an example, Dana, look at number 2.
mm-hmm.
Free immunization for ASD students. How many were there? How many clients? How many students?
We do have that number. There are things that we can apply, actual, like, I guess, people served with that, but there's other things like a police response call or a homeless encampment cleanup or,
Human Services Committee.
yeah, the Human Services Committee or the public, we can assign. I don't know that we could get a consistent number on some of those things.
But you could provide an estimate. If you
yeah.
identified it as an estimate,
Yeah.
then we would understand.
Councilmember Wagner.
I'm not sure I agree with having a column for number of people served. We had this big discussion several years ago when we tried to go to outcomes as opposed to number of people served. Because in one category, serving that person might be every day, all the year long. In another case, it might be one time during the year. And so that ordinal number of people served has got a huge spectrum of effort required. And so when you look at the dollars, or if you took the number of people and divided it into the dollars, it's really kind of a useless number to me, because it can lead you astray to say, oh, we're not getting anything out of this one. Well, maybe it's because you only had 10 seconds with each person. And where another one that says one person and $10,000, maybe you worked with them for 5 years or something. Anyway, this count of people, I think, is a dangerous thing to do in terms of decision-making for us, and in terms of people comparing how they can compete. I think a lot of organizations are going to use this sheet to say, okay, how do I stack up in terms of maybe getting some money? And if they have that list of people and you don't know what all the circumstances are around that number, I think it can lead them astray as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. We do provide numbers in the 1%, in the general fund money, because the applicants must tell us how many clients they expect to serve. They must report to us that they're hitting those numbers, and if they don't, they don't get their money. So in that area, we can certainly do that because it's part of the application process and the reporting process throughout. With this last thing, it is very foggy, and I would even say, you know, kind of to your point, Councilmember Wagner, that, you know, funding a transitional home, you're gonna maybe have 2 people served, but that's very expensive. Where funding, there's somebody in here who gets like $2,000, but they're able to serve like 100 people with it because their service isn't that expensive. Maybe they're giving out free diapers, or maybe they're doing things that don't require a lot of cash to do it, but they're able to help a lot of people. So it can be fuzzy.
You know, I came out real strong against having a column for people served, yet we talk about it all the time. And so maybe it's good to have it in front of us with another big disclaimer in your good words.
Flashing
Don't take
yellow
these
light.
things as direct comparisons, because just exactly what you said, the housing might be 10,000, the immunization might be $1.
Do you label everything at your house? Big bold labels.
In a word, yes.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Okay, look at 23. Public defender. So no one cares on this council how many we served for $634,000?
You're required to serve them all.
No, but.
So we had it in our report from them, and it was an interesting number. All I'm saying is if we start working with those numbers, make sure people don't misuse them.
We need to just work with the numbers that are on the block grant. Now, some of these on the second page, which are supposed to be things that the city is contributing in the area of human services, I think people would love to know. The utilities discount, rebates and discounts, and what we do with inclement weather
Where are
things. I'm on the.
Oh, you're on.
Yes,
like
on
2019, 20.
Getting credit for the Civics Academy, to me, is not a human service. I think of human services, National Night Out is not a human service.
I don't know about that.
Well, look what's listed. You were doing drug and alcohol work out there. That's just general communication. But on the YMCA scholarships, who are we paying for those 60, or are they paying for it?
They are.
And
We
it-
just administer the
Okay.
program.
See, it's on our list of what we're contributing, yet they're paying for it.
Right, so that's in that bucket we would call it's a value to us.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to value out those free vouchers, it would be $72,000. Our cost is just simply some staff time to administer and decide who qualifies for the vouchers.
Then we should have a footnote
Yeah, because that looks like we're paying for those scholarships.
identifying, you know.
Yeah.
Right, that's what Councilmember Wagner asked for
Okay, so
earlier,
that's
to
what-
separate out
that's
those
what-
things, a direct cost
No,
versus an
okay.
indirect or
Separate
evaluation.
columns. To figure a way to-
We don't need a separate column.
We'll let the experts come up with a way to share it for us.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
You just said
Is anyone in this study group interested in doing an ad hoc committee that looks at the priorities of, and the overall philosophy that we share in 2019 to our committee as the parameters. I mean, not serving, that thinks it's a good idea for us to look at.
For 2019.
Yes, for 2019.
I do for 2019, but.
John, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts that this is a discussion that's better made in public, just like we're doing right now.
Okay.
I really encourage us to have this debate so that we can have reasoning presented on the interwaves and on TV.
Okay.
And we have people in the audience watching, so we hear the reason behind it.
So is
You
your,
know, ad hocs have a real valid purpose, but when you're picking which is more important, I think it's important that the public hear your thoughts behind why this item A is more important than item B, especially if you are a principal in item B.
yeah, okay. So maybe we should wait until Dana gets us some more, oh, yes, Claude.
Since we're moving into focus groups, and human services is one of our key focus groups.
Yes.
You know, and I kind of agree with John in that respect, where I think the focus group should take a look at this first.
Okay.
You know, we have the chairperson for that, kind of look at those items that really become those that need more information, more explanation, and kind of bring it out in that fashion. Where from that point, if we need to go to an ad hoc after that, I would encourage that, but I'd like to see our focus groups take on more of the responsibility up front here.
I
Back
think
to
that
the-
that
Get
you
back
really.
to the committee.
Well, I think you're striking a good balance, and so is John. What you're basically saying is, we got to make sure that with the structures that we have that analyze the data are balanced, and I think that's a good point. You wanted to say something, Bob?
Just briefly, I don't think the council should be doing a lot of the things that the commission or the committee, Human Services Committee does. But I do believe that, you know, that wherever possible, we should have some of these things quantified so that we know how the numbers were conceived. I mean, were they just pulled out of the air, or was there some thought behind, like, the first item, 249,950? How did that number get conceived? I mean, it just, in generality, any of these numbers in here, whether they be CBDG or the other CDBG or others, but anyway, I just think that we need to be logical about this and try to show enough definition where the definition is possible. And you know, that gives us the information we need to make rational decisions. We shouldn't be questioning what the commission or the committee does, but they should be able to put it in a form that we can understand. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I think we're to the point where maybe we're ready to let Yolanda, as the chair of this group, kind of get some of this kind of pulled together, and Dana will continue to work with staff on answering some of our questions here. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Great, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank
work
you
with
for
that.
being so open to some of these, letting us kind of play with how we want to see it reported.
Not a problem.
It's as clear as mud.
As is everything.
Okay, we're going to move on to ordinance number 6639, a rezone. Great.
Good evening, council members. I'm Jeff Mitchell, Planning Services Manager, and I'd like to begin with a little introduction that applies to all three of the ordinances that
Okay.
are on the agenda tonight, and then I'll break into a discussion of them each individually.
Okay, so you're going to do presentation and we hold our questions.
I'm open to, if you want to have questions along the way, we can do that, or either way.
Okay, we'll see how it naturally unfolds. Okay.
So the purpose tonight is to have an introductory discussion and describe the three proposed ordinances, 6639, 6640, and 6641, each of which are rezone actions. These are also known as zoning map amendments. They're essentially the same thing. And why I wanted to provide an overview that applies to all three is they have many common elements. They're all changes in the zoning designation that apply to specific pieces of property or lots, and they revise the city's official zoning map. All three requests also have their origin in related or previous comprehensive plan map amendments that the city considered through a public process by the City Council as part of the annual comprehensive plan amendment process. As you may recall, the annual comprehensive plan amendments had related comprehensive plan map changes, and these were the subject of a public hearing process with the city's planning commission. The planning commission then in turn made a recommendation through a public hearing process where they took public input and made a recommendation to the city council. And subsequently at the city council meeting on November 28th, 2016, the city council approved ordinance 6632, which actually implemented these comprehensive plan map changes. The second common element between all three of these cases is that each of these is a rezone application that was the subject of a second public hearing process through the city's hearing examiner. So each of these rezone actions that are the subject of these ordinances was considered by the city's hearing examiner, and this hearing examiner has made a recommendation to the city council on each of these. So what's coming before the council is each of these ordinances for the purpose of changing the zoning map and to maintain consistency between the comprehensive plan and the zoning regulations as required by the Growth Management Act and as required by the city's own regulations at Auburn City Code 14-22-050, which relates to conformance and consistency of the comprehensive plan. So what I'd like to do is touch and describe each of these cases and the affected land area, parcel size, and the change in designations that's requested. The purpose is to provide the council an introductory discussion so that it would be appropriate for their consideration and action on March 6th. The first one is Ordinance 6639 and application REZ 15001. It is an application that seeks to change the zoning classification of 4 parcels totaling approximately 5.8 acres from the current zoning designation of C1 light commercial and C3 heavy commercial to the city's M1 light industrial designation. The property is located on the east side of A Street Southeast between Lake Tapps Parkway and Lakeland Hills Way, and is within the King County portion of Auburn. The applications were submitted by John Cheatham, who's identified as the managing member of Canopy Limited Liability Corporation, property owner and applicant. The site currently contains a mixture of single-family residential and temporarily stored modular vehicles that were authorized by a temporary use permit. The site's bordered by A Street Southeast, which is a principal arterial. A map of the site is shown at page 49 of your package, which has an aerial photo of the site. The applicant has indicated in their materials that they seek to rezone the property for the purposes of greater flexibility for the relocation and expansion of their business, Lake Ridge Paving Company, to relocate from their current facility in Maple Valley.
Stop just for a second. We have a question from Councilmember Pelosi.
On page 49, what are those dwellings in there?
49 is a I think it's a 2015 aerial photo. So actually some of the residences, some of the single-family residences have been removed subsequently through a demolition permit. So this is a little earlier photo and does show single-family residences that were there. I think at the present time, one still remains.
And what is this going to be used for?
The applicant currently has applications pending for redevelopment of the site for a paving company.
Well, I think that at one time this has come before us before, and you shared with us aesthetically what this is going to look like from the road and how things are going to have barriers and other type things. Could you share that with us again and then tell us what is going to be the impact of that on this big, huge square piece of property? Is that buildable that is to the east of those 4 lots?
Okay, I'd be happy to.
Great.
So the hearing examiner conducted a public hearing on this request and made a recommendation to City Council for approval of this rezone. He did that with the 3 conditions that are identified in the agenda bill, and the 3 conditions relate to the issues you were just describing. The first condition is related to a landscape screen along the street to make sure that as this gets used for industrial purposes, that it has an aesthetic treatment along this highly visible transportation corridor of the city. The second condition was related to signage and making sure that the lighting and the scale of the signage is appropriate along this corridor. And then the third condition, as identified in the SEPA decision as made a recommendation by the examiner, is related to making sure that the utility services are commensurate with the type of use. So we're changing this to a light industrial designation. While we know what the applicant and the property owner seeks to do, it could be used for a range of things that are allowed by the M1 zoning. So we want to make sure that the utility services are coordinated with whatever that use turns out to be.
Councilmember Wagner.
But the property to the east is zoned residential, isn't it?
Yes, the property to the east, I'm sorry, I didn't answer that part of your question. The property to the east is zoned residential. However, this is a very steep hillside leading up to Lakeland Hills. So I don't expect that this is very developable because it does fall in the city's geologic hazard areas and would be a critical environmentally sensitive area. What this aerial photo doesn't show is the significant change in topography right beyond these properties.
Councilmember Wagner.
Well, then I'd like to see a topo map, eventually, not tonight, but a map that shows that steepness, because I think that's a critical part of this decision is you don't usually put M1 or M2 right next to residential. You just don't hardly ever do it. And so if we're doing it, we ought to have a pretty good idea that whoever owns that property to the east isn't being hurt by this.
So, so the page 50 shows how the map would change. It shows kind of the current zoning designations and how the zoning designations would change with this request. And yes, the topography map was part of the exhibits shared with the examiner, was the basis for the decision, but we could provide it in a subsequent council package.
Really appreciate it, because I think we've had some people from our community come and query us on, what this is going to look like. And so if we can do some extra due diligence, I think it's worth our time. Councilmember Baggett.
Just for clarification, Jeff, on page 34, where we talk at the second to last paragraph, there was an ordinance created 6632 back on December 5th of 2016. Maybe educate me a little bit here. What's the difference between that ordinance that was approved last year versus what we're trying to do here?
Happy to. So there's maps that are part of the city's comprehensive plan document that show a mapped land use pattern for the city for a longer 20-year horizon. And that is expressed in terms of by policy guidance that describes what kind of density ranges and what types of uses we generally want in different areas of the city, and that's adopted by the city council. And as you know, we went through an update of that at the end of 2015. Then that is implemented by the zoning map. So there's a zoning map that applies the specific development regulations to locations of the city to implement that long-term land use pattern of the city's comprehensive plan. So we may, for example, we may have an area of the city that's designated for single-family residential by the city's comprehensive plan. So it specifies that we want this area to be over a 20-year period to be a single-family residential area, and then that gets implemented by potentially different zoning regulations. We might have it, within that area, we might have an R5 zone that has a 5 units per acre density, and we may have an R7 that has a 7 units per acre density. So there may be different zones that even implement those comprehensive plan designations. I'm giving you kind of the long-winded answer.
I understand. My only concern was that this 6632 ordinance from last year actually changed it over to what we're saying we're trying to do here as well.
It set the, it set the pattern for the development regulations to follow. Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wagner.
I don't know whether I've seen it in print or just heard you guys talking about it, but you're thinking about making outdoor storage a little more, maybe not a little more, maybe a lot more available to various zoning situations. Or is M1 one of those where you may be increasing the amount of outdoor storage available?
We've made some changes historically to the amount of outdoor storage to allow that with, I mean, there's some zones like the M1 zone that have percentages and that generally have requirements that it not be, that it may be located more to the rear of property and that it be landscape screened.
But is there some work afoot to bring us proposals for more outdoor storage than is allowed in the past?
I'm not aware of any efforts for code development that way.
See, I was on the planning commission. Can I say a little more?
Yeah, please.
I was on the planning commission 30 years ago when we did a citywide rezone. One of the most talked about things in the groups we did was outdoor storage in the various zones. And I'm sure it will be a concern for this property as well, both for the visual effects, even if we put up a screen, and for the developability of that hillside, which is good buildable land with a lot of tax base if we put it full of apartments like they did just south of that, about the same hillside as that one. So I think that I'm a little leery of this move because of the potential down valuing of the property to the east. But, and it's a study session, not a vote.
I want to emphasize that the council, the main decisions are made at the comprehensive plan stage, where we change a land use designation. And so this is in fact a change to make the zoning align with the comprehensive plan designations, and that both the city's laws and the state laws do require that those ultimately be consistent.
Councilmember Holman.
A point of inquiry, if I may, Dan. These three matters have gone, if I understand you correctly, Jeff, through public hearing and the hearing examiner.
They've gone through public hearings on the comp plan change at the planning commission level and for the rezone change at the hearing exam level.
So my question to you, Dan, is remind me on the relationship of the hearing examiner. We've taken a lot of the authority on that used to belong to the council and transferred it over to the hearing examiner. And we have a certain relationship. Could you clarify that for me so that we don't get into trouble?
Okay, there are several different types of decision-making processes that could come into play, and the hearing examiner is, in some of them, the final answer. In these are rezones which do require an ordinance, and the hearing examiner's role is to make a recommendation to the city council. So it ultimately does come back to you. You want to make sure your questions are satisfied, but this is different than some of the other areas where the quasi-judicial decision-making process has been given to the hearing examiner so that his decision, his or her decision, would be appealable perhaps if challenged to court rather than coming back before the city council for a decision.
Thank you. I needed that refresher.
Jeff, you want to go continue on?
Sure. So, on that request, the examiner has recommended approval with the 3 conditions that were identified in the SEPA decision, that were recommended by staff, and that were disclosed at the public hearing. I'd like to move on to the second request.
Oh, wait, Councilmember DeCoursey.
So Jeff, on page 33, on item 1.1, I'm sorry, 11, C, where it talks about the SEPA and the non-project action. So in consideration of Lake Ridge Paving's proposed manufacturing process where they do manufacture asphalt, how is that manufacturing process taken into consideration regarding the SEPA? The SEPA talks about a lot of existing conditions and perhaps some proposed things that Lake Ridge Paving will do, but how is that relationship formed within that for the decision-making process?
The file number or application that's referenced in that paragraph relates to the environmental checklist application that they submitted for the rezone action itself, to change the comprehensive plan and to change the rezone, the zoning designation. They have a separate SEPA action related to the site development. That was, they didn't have all of the features and didn't know precisely the nature of their development activity at the time they filed this, so they needed to get this underway to start off with. They've subsequently been working on identifying all the aspects of their site development.
So, let me ask you a question. So, say for example that in the SEPA for their site development, which includes asphalt manufacturing, goes back in some form of a negative process, and I use that in a sense where, you know, perhaps the creation of hazardous materials or waste or toxic materials, et cetera,
Fumes.
come into play. How does it impact the decision-making on the ordinance that we're looking at now?
I understand this business to not be, I mean, they are a paving company, but they do not manufacture on this site. They actually have their vehicles stored here, and they would go off-site to a manufacturer, fill up their vehicles, go out to the job site, but they would not be manufacturing the product here.
Okay, that's, when we talk about that move from Maple Valley to Auburn, I was thinking our whole operation would move here, so
I could
that
smell it.
clarifies it. So, yeah.
Councilmember Wagner.
So what's to stop them from making a proposal to put an asphalt plant that'll have a lot of odor to it?
Yeah. Well, we have some asphalt manufacturing at some of the mining sites now in town.
I could smell them a mile away.
So, but you didn't answer the
Yeah,
question.
what's to stop them from doing that, or what's the,
It would have to come back to us. If they-
not necessarily, if it's allowed by the zoning regulations, it would not, because that's what's, the zoning regulations that the council has already put in place.
But if it's light industrial, does that mean you could manufacture asphalt under light industrial?
I don't think it would, because it would really need, most of that occurs outside, and odor is in the city's M2 heavy industrial designation zone property. So I believe that the zoning regulations themselves don't allow that use to occur at that site.
Thank you.
So the other request, the one that's ordinance 6640 and identified by application REZ 140001, is a request by Vernon Mart, who's identified as the managing member of Romart Investments LLC and as applicant. And that is a request to rezone a single parcel totaling approximately 2.2 acres. That is from the current designation of R5 residential to C1 light commercial. And this property is located at the extreme southeast corner of the city in the Pierce County portion. And it's actually at the corner, at the northwest corner of Lake Taps Parkway Southeast and 182nd Avenue. It's bordered to the east by a Pierce County roadway of 182nd Avenue East and to the south by Lake Taps Parkway. This property was the subject of conditional use permit and development applications that were submitted to Pierce County before it was part of the city of Auburn. They secured those approvals in Pierce County after it was annexed, pursuant to the regulations that were in place about continuing and grandfathering those vested rights to pursue those applications. The applicant kept it viable in terms of renewing those approvals for a number of years, but they now have subsequently expired. But they are seeking to develop the property in a similar manner. The property is also bordered to the northwest and to the west by utility corridor and a storm pond. So the property is somewhat isolated, and they're seeking to change it from the designation that was applied at the time of annexation of residential to the C1 light commercial designation. The map that shows how the designation would change is shown on page 101 of your package, and an aerial photo of the site is shown on page 100. This was also the subject of a hearing conducted on January 18th by the hearing examiner, and he's recommending approval of the request for the zone change with one condition. And that also is a condition that was identified in the SEPA decision for the project, and it's a condition about ordination of the driveway location with some on-site wetlands to make sure that the driveway is in a safe location in relationship to other driveways and nearby intersections.
What page is that condition on? Just Google it. Is it on 110? Is that it on 110?
It is on 97. The hearing examiner, so it's right after the subheading of decision. It says the hearing examiner recommends approval with the following one condition.
What's going to go in there?
I don't know that they have a specific proposal, but they're planning on a multi-story commercial multi-tenant building.
Okay.
There's a gas station across the street and also a...
So it kind of fits in with the neighborhood, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the stuff across the street is in Pierce County.
Okay, thank you.
That was gonna be my question, and how long was it, how long? When are they planning on doing this?
I don't know their timetable for development. They do not have any other development applications submitted with the city for the site development, which they would need to do since the previous ones have expired.
Councilmember Wagner?
Well, since page 97 mentions the county engineer, how do we get?
And it's appropriate to continue to mention the county engineer because 182nd is still a county road in this vicinity. So it is still their jurisdiction in terms of the driveway location. And matter of fact, this is the condition that Pierce County had for the project at the time the application was pending with them. So it's one that they're aware of and that they had appropriately determined at the time of the development application going through Pierce County process. The third case, ordinance 6641, application REZ 160002, is a city-initiated rezone application. It seeks to change the zoning classification of 3 parcels totaling approximately 137 acres from its current designation of light industrial, M1, and M2 heavy industrial to the city's C3 heavy commercial designation. The site consists of 3 parcels, one of which is The largest one, which is owned by the United States government as a General Services Administration or GSA parcel. And south of that is located is 2 parcels owned by the city of Auburn. Currently contains the city's ancillary fire station and another parcel to gain access to the fire station out to C Street. The GSA portion of the site contains a mixture of uses, including federal government offices and warehouses and a daycare. East side of the site is bordered by C Street Southwest, which is a 2 to 4 lane north-south roadway classified as a minor arterial. And then the north side of the GSA ownership is bordered by 15th Street Southwest, which is also designated as a principal arterial. The purpose of this rezone is in anticipation of the U.S. government and General Services Administration's intent to reconfigure their ownership and their office needs. And it's anticipated that would result in a reduced need for land and possible sale or surplusing of a portion of their site. The city is proposing this change in order to get this in the queue, since we're limited under state law to changing our comprehensive plan map once a year. So we needed to get this in that cycle so that we would be participatory to that process. And also the city initiated this to change it to the C3 heavy commercial zone to be better suited to accomplish the economic development goals of the city.
Don't we have right along there the railroad? Is this light teal, is that the railroad?
Yes, on the opposite side of C Street to the east is the Burlington Northern Rail Yard.
Thank you.
The GSA offices have indicated that they do plan to continue at this current location, and they've also indicated that their land needs will likely change. And we have been coordinating this rezone and comp plan changes with them, and they have not expressed any objection or concern and feel like if it's meeting the city's need, they see it as a partnership where they can redevelop their site, continue largely their office uses, and their reduced need for warehouse space for General Services Administration. So this was also the subject of the comprehensive plan public hearing process through the Planning Commission, changed by in Ordinance 6632 by the City Council, and then a subsequent hearing on January 18th with the city's hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner issued a written recommendation for approval of this change without any conditions. So it would change the property to the city's C3 heavy commercial designation, and the effect of that map change is shown on page 130 of your package.
Any questions? Any more questions for Jeff? I know you have one question, don't you, Bill?
Not on this one.
Okay.
So I don't want to, if council is happy with this one. Okay, I'd like to go back, you guys, just to make a reference for the council that may ease our minds a little bit on this. 6639, the first ordinance for rezone. And it would be page 35, you guys. Page 35. Over there. Everybody there? Okay. Now look at the second paragraph from the bottom. And I'm looking at the last sentence, pardon me, the second to last sentence. Where it says, using involving substantial storage or processing of hazardous materials as well as substantial emissions should not be permitted in these areas. What does that mean to you, Jeff?
Well, each of these are expressions of the comprehensive plan designations that apply to these certain areas that are then implemented by the zoning regulations. So Yes, I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier. We
Right.
have areas of the city that have the light industrial designation to have a greater amount of indoor activity, less external impacts from those operations. Then we have the city's M2 designations that have those more intensive uses that probably generally have more outside activity.
So this is a kind of an insurance paragraph, I think.
Concur.
Yeah.
So I mean, we talked about concerns, and I think that this is protection.
Yes, Councilmember DeCoursey.
And not reading into this, but again, knowing Linkridge Paving, what they do, you know, and Jeff clarified it, no manufacturing, but they will have their trucks there for storage. So all their materials, the trucks will go apparently to another location to pick up materials. So we're not going to see any paving materials, any hazardous materials that will actually be stored on site. Vehicles will be stored there, perhaps other types of equipment, but we're not going to see any of that other type of activity from what I read into this.
That's why I wanted to point that out.
Any other questions for Jeff? I appreciate how you brought them all. You gave us the overview so that we had basic understanding for each one, and you were patient with us. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And if we could get the topography one for the first one, that would be a nice visual aid for Councilmember Wagner.
Yeah, it was in the hearing examiner's packet, but what I can do is I can provide it with the council in the next.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
meeting.
Yep.
We're now going to move on to item F, the slogan, which I believe currently is more than you can imagine. Yes?
Before we proceed, it's
Yeah.
more of a housekeeping.
Yeah.
We have adopted a new policy in our hybrid system.
Okay.
And if our agenda were to have a item 4 added to it,
Okay.
listed as other discussions,
As opposed to adjournment?
well,
Yeah.
for
Well,
future,
added.
just added other discussions in there.
We need that.
Where this topics like you added to the agenda
Right.
could be, then beyond that would be a item 5, which would be new business.
Okay, new business.
Now that there is a difference between the two. Under discussion, the items just like you have added extemporaneously. But under new business, it would be future policy making, strategic planning, or key state or federal issues, substantive issues would become under new business for discussion. And it's in our new policy. Well, it's not new. It's, in fact, that language is quite old. But just for the keeping us in track and order. And now then, if you'll forgive me, on to slogans.
No, I want to write that down. I think it's points well taken. So we would have, it would be other topics
Other
would
discussion.
become Roman numeral 4. Okay?
Yeah, other discussion items, I
Other
believe is
discussion.
the language.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Okay? And the new business would become item 5,
5, Roman numeral 5.
and then adjournment would become 6.
Correct.
Got it. Great, thank you, good idea. Or-
It's not an idea, it's just
Policy.
bring us in compliance with our policy.
Great, good.
And we have talked about that previously, months ago.
So now we are on
That's
other discussion items and the slogan. And I think that at our last economic development presentation, that we talked a little bit about it, and thought we didn't see that this agenda was so terribly full that we couldn't begin the process of kind of sharing some ideas and thoughts. Yes, Councilmember Wagner.
I like the suggestion of Auburn, the city that works.
guess a nod doesn't show up on the record. I concur.
I like the idea of having our arts and our parks more than you can imagine, and having, if we have to have an overriding one, the works one. But because a more than imagine is really representative, I feel, of our Parks Department and our recreation and our arts.
And our golf course.
And our golf course. Okay.
That's the
How
first.
about, Bob, do you have any thoughts?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
Sorry.
And the Auburn International Farmers Market, more than you imagine.
So what I'll do is I'll bring this up to Nancy, and
I'd
we'll
love that.
see if it gets legs, you know, and we will move forward. Do you
So
feel?
how are you going to implement that?
Through
I don't know if we.
No.
I think we want to make this into a non-money issue. You know, spending $400,000 on branding is really a waste. I think that if we can all agree that we just continue it with the one, we know, with our parks and our arts and whatever, and then let's talk to Nancy and see, maybe we just change it on our letterhead and it's phased in, but I don't think that it has to be a huge money item, and it's not worth being a huge money item.
Don't want to buy new stationery.
No.
May I suggest, this is Dan behind you, may I suggest that we also spend a little bit of energy, and it can be done by staff, just to check to see what other slogans might be out there that might be similar.
Yeah, exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I'll share this with Nancy and Mayor Backus, and we'll see if we can get some legs. Okay.
Okay.
Also, under other discussion items, I have heard from a number of you that you would like to see some more refinements or tools or whatever as it relates to the use of the document that we prepare in response to the regional committees that we attend.
Yeah, Phil wasn't here, so we could ask
yeah,
him
well,
those questions.
the mayor was going to she took the list,
Okay.
and she was going to,
Okay, and, yeah.
This is in relation to the form we fill out itself. And I don't know about the rest of you, what I find is that if I'm filling out the form. Yeah.
no, I'm
Okay.
thinking of something
Yeah,
else.
this is
I'm
Yes,
the
sorry.
yeah,
form. So
okay.
when we fill out the form, it's a fill it out now or lose it forever kind of a form. So we don't have an opportunity to save our work or go back, and in some cases, we have to do our own spell check. So I'm not sure, what format the form is in, but maybe we could have, IT go back and take a look at that and see if there's any opportunity to kind of tweak that for us so we can save our work, review our work, maybe have some other features.
And
within the form.
also with the other features, it's like when we have someone else goes with us, there's nowhere in there except it says other, and you can't go in there and put who the other was. So that would be kind of nice to have who else went with you to your committee meeting.
Okay, and somebody else talked about spell check. Oh, Councilmember
Well,
Pelosi.
I'm not at spell check yet. So I do my summary through the meeting, and I send it to Antoinette.
Right, but
Aren't you clever?
Are you guys, is this
No,
something
we're supposed to
that
be
you-
doing them ourselves.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I do my own.
Yeah, yes, Councilmember Holman.
Just a workaround that I use.
Yeah.
Because I'm quite dependent on spell check. I have a template of what's asked on that form. And then I go in for Word for Windows, and I fill out my template, and then I just cut and paste. And so
That's a good idea.
I just cut and paste directly into the application, and I know that spell check and grammar, and I'm even capable of screwing up spell check on Word for Windows, but nonetheless, it's easier to cut and paste. It's just a workaround over a simple format.
But you
May I
can't,
make a
you
suggestion?
can't put.
Yes, Councilmember
Maybe what
DeCoursey.
we need is a training program with Councilmember Holman on how to do all this stuff.
No, I am not I'm not the,
But John, you
Well,
can't
even,
put,
I'm saying, even the cut and paste portion, because some of us may not be savvy with how we
I can,
take the word.
I know how to
and
do
paste
that,
it
but
to
you
the
can't
form.
put other in there, you can't put a person's name
yeah.
under the other?
You could put it into the body somewhere, if it was
Oh,
that
I've
important
never
that you
seen it.
listed someone else that
Okay.
was attending it with you. You know, you can't let the form rule us, but we
Yeah.
need more
Amen.
time.
That's true.
We have to have them on time. I hate it when it just closes out because I sat it here while I thought about something. We need time. Some of us need spell check and the ability to save it
Yeah.
while we're thinking.
But
Anything else?
I'll happily share my template with anybody that wants to
Well,
use it.
the reason you developed that is because we don't have the other features
Yeah,
available
I
in
just,
the existing.
I prefer to use Word for Windows to write with.
But it would be nice to be able to save it, because like, we were getting ready to come to our meeting, and he couldn't save it. So he had to, did you finish
By the
it?
time we got, well, I did tonight, but by the time I got back before I lost it, so
Yeah.
timed out.
Bob, any extra things or thoughts that you'd like to see us talk to IT about? I'll talk to the mayor about this and see what, we can get done. You come up with other thoughts, send them to me, but don't expect a reply. I've put on the agenda for the March 27th study session an open and transparent discussion of our city boards and commissions, and I've asked Dan to look at the list of all the ones that we have, and tell us which ones have to be appointed by the mayor, which ones have to be appointed by the council, which ones, and how many we need, and that kind of thing. Because recently, which was great, I thought we had a number of them all at one time. But I think we have to have a better understanding of it, such as some of those committees ended up having people on more than one committee. Is that something that we want to do? And what is really our mandated or required level of approval? And are there any of those where we're supposed to be involved? So anyway, I wanted to share with you and Dan that this is a topic that I've added for the March 27th agenda so that you can start thinking along those lines. We've been very fortunate that we asked Mayor Nancy Backus to provide us with the applications, and that's been very, very helpful. And I think the next step is for us to increase our understanding of those that are mandated and those that don't require our approval and whatever else. Any other thoughts?
That's good.
So now, thank you.
Can I just
Yes,
ask one real quick
please.
question?
Yes.
And that is what was the date that this will be coming back? Because I want to make sure I get this task completed.
March 27th is when I put it on the agenda. Yes, Councilmember Wagner.
Are you going to include in that council liaisons? Because I think the only one that's codified is the one that I fill, which is the liaison to the Arts Commission. Yet, I think there are other liaisons that happen.
You know, that's a whole nother topic
I
that
know, yeah.
we want to bring up eventually is the liaisons. So
No,
do we
let's
want to
leave it.
do it in concert with this or separate? Councilmember Holman.
If I may, I think it would be more logical to do the two separately. Advisory boards contained in Rule 16.4 in our policy. And then, where did I see liaisons? It's towards the end of our procedures. But anyway, it's a
Yeah.
different paragraph, and don't want to make that much sausage.
Well,
Why not?
what I'm trying to do is we have these little naggy little things, and we did such an excellent job on figuring out our focus groups and just trying to clean up a few little things as we go along. And we're in no hurry. and it just makes us more efficient. Yes, Councilmember Holman.
Again, 16.4, advisory boards, commissions, committees, they're established by ordinance. Only we can establish ordinances. So the committees that exist to this day are from ordinances that we or our predecessors built. And so we just have to go look at the ordinance to tell us how the commissions are constructed.
Thank you, Dan, for helping us with this. Okay? Any other questions?
Yep.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Pelosi.
We need an ad hoc committee matrix. So that we, no.
Yeah, really,
so
we-
that
we have so
can
many.
track which ones are open.
Yeah, that's.
I mean,
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
okay.
Okay?
We
That-
need that.
I'll put that on our list too, to share with Nancy. Okay?
I don't know how many are still open, so.
Well, if there is no other, Bob, you look like, no. Okay, Councilmember Holman.
Well, again, just for the good of the order, if
Yes.
you would. Advisory boards, commissions, and advisory liaisons
Yeah.
are quite substantive. And that would then be filed under new business. Just for future reference, as we get more comfortable with this style, this would have been a new business item, and there's considerable interest at the table, and the deputy mayor then would see if it rose to
Yeah.
sufficient consensus to then take and meet with the mayor and to have it added to a future study session as a regular agenda item with appropriate background material.
Point well taken. Thank you. Any other thoughts before we move to item 6? Roman numeral 6. We're going to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.